Manfred. How are you doing today?
Hello, Rahul. I'm doing very well. Yeah.
And I must also say, on that note, I also enjoyed listening to our last conversation. We had started discussing about the 10 keys to effective leadership. We had touched upon the first two. We spoke last time about mastery of communication and interaction skills, and we spoke about mastery of authentic executive presence. I must say, both of them gave a lot of clarity to me, not only from a concept perspective, but through the stories that you shared, through the examples that you shared. It made me think about how do I plan myself better and in specific situations, and of course also for some of the clients that I am right now working with. So I'm so much looking forward to today's conversation.
Well, look, last time about communication, it's how we interact and communicate is one of the key elements in effective leadership. If you think about this, everything else is based on how we interact.
Totally agree. And I also I'm very much impressed by the way you simplify the concept. I think theoretically we all understand what leadership is, but your definition of leadership is nothing but getting results through people and cutting out everything else from the chase. I think that simplifies for me how to even think about a concept which sometimes can become abstract for a lot of people, used and abused in a lot of conversations, but this makes it very simpler. So same way, I think I would like to start today's conversation by focusing on the next set of keys for effective leadership, and would want to start by understanding how you would define them, and then would love to hear about some of the interesting stories that have been part of either your experience or you're working with your clients to understand
Mhm.
them better and how to apply them in my own life, in helping others how do they can think about applying in their own professional life for better success. So, to start with, today we will first talk about mastery of conflict management skills. And My first question to you is, when you define conflict management and conflict management skills, what is your definition?
Well, I'm not so sure there is one clear definition because conflict is, of course, a very broad term. But in essence, it is when you and I have a disagreement and we need to find out how can we settle on either a compromise or a consensus or sometimes to agree to disagree in a professional way. But you can't always get on the same page. Sometimes it just doesn't work because my beliefs or my thoughts are completely different than yours. And that's one of the key elements. If you think about our own beliefs, really become our reality, our truth. And when we look at that for a moment, our beliefs, what we believe or don't believe, becomes our reality. And that is our basis from which we then determine and judge and act on our disagreements um, or agreements with other people. And so when we look at conflict, I think the first thing that we need to consider is again a look into the mirror. What are my beliefs about this situation? What do I see as my reality, and how does that relate to the other person's reality? You know, and I know I get always some challenges on that, but if you think for a moment, what is truth? Most people consider truth as this absolute term. For me, truth is relative, and of course, I can hear already the uproar. How can be truth relative? Well, it's very simple. I'll give you an example. Is this glass half full or half empty? It can't be both because it's the opposite. One is the opposite of the other. So what is it? Well, it depends on your perspective. If you think it is half full, that's what it's going to be. If I think it's half empty, that's what it's going to be. It's still the same glass and the same amount of liquid in it. Do you see where I'm going with that?
Yes.
And when we think about this and think about a conflict, a disagreement, we need to understand our own position and how relevant is it in this context of the disagreement. And then ideally, we need to look at the other person's or group's perspective and position and what makes them believe what they believe. And then we can start having a conversation and recognizing. And to me, conflict management is not very, very difficult. It is a question of relating to other people and getting to understand where they are coming from. And the moment we move away from our position and maybe make a step outside and look at the whole situation, then we can start asking better questions.
What is the skill that we are talking about here, Manfred? I think I'm understanding the concept better. When you define it this way, I surely get the fact that conflicts arise because of difference in perspective. There is no hard absolute truth. And whenever there is a conflict, it means that there are different beliefs about a particular situation. The example that you commonly known example, glass half empty or half full. Uh, I'm looking at it from the lens of it being half full. You are looking at it from the lens of it being half empty, and that's how we are defining the situation. And in that situation, the solution which is required is to understand that it's the difference in perspective. How do I understand the other person's perspective, and then make them understand my perspective so that we can arrive at a common ground. I think this part is clear.
So,
What so what is the skill here? If someone were to think about practicing, which are the one or two habits or skills that one has to hone?
look, most conflicts are really taking place in the middle of an issue, not at the beginning of an issue and not at the end of an issue. And what do I mean by that? It's not the starting point. That's when we start talking and finding out that we have a conflict. But then we get stuck in the middle. And when you approach this in a different way, when you get stuck, when you then are willing to inquire and find out, okay, what is it really that you would like as the outcome? And if we then can look at the outcome, often people want the same outcome or a very similar outcome. They are not in agreement how to get there. But if we can get then agreement on the outcome, then we can kind of re-engineer back and say, okay, where is it falling apart? Where can we then find potentially a consensus, hopefully? That would be the ideal situation, or at least a workable compromise that gets you as close as possible to that outcome and gives me as well as much where I can say, okay, this will work for me.
So in other words, is the first skill the ability to uh, visualize a target outcome.
Yes.
In other words, I'm also thinking of uh, one of the most common skills which is so relevant today, and I see it almost always in the work that I also do, is not actually problem solving but problem finding. In today's age, almost everyone has access to infinite amount of data. So it's not always about I'm lack of ideas, I don't have information. It's always about what is the problem that we are dealing with here. And once I have clarity about what is the problem that I want to solve in any situation, like you were saying, that's not in the beginning, it's probably in the middle, that with so much of information, I've seen it live as well. One actually loses track of what is the most relevant problem to focus on before you get into problem solving mode. So
Yes.
similarly, the situation that you're talking about here is that we started doing a discussion. We are in the middle of that discussion, and there is no clarity on what is the common outcome that we are now aiming for, because of which the conflict arises in the first place.
Yes. And I'll give you an example. I had a I had a client. She was the legal counsel, internal. It's in a larger corporation, but in one of the divisions. She was the legal counsel and was tasked to deal with all the different contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And her counterpart that she often had conflicts with
Mm.
was the head of, I think it was called sales, or was it distribution? In any case, an operational function that was focusing on fulfillment and customer satisfaction and so on. So they constantly had kind of a battle, and she was very distraught about it. She said, I have a task. I need to make sure that the contracts that our salespeople and our fulfillment people are putting forward to our customers, that they are sound and they are not putting us into any issues, and still serve the purpose of creating the right outcome for our customers as well. And so I suggested to her, why don't you find out what this guy really, what's his main issue with you on these contracts, not with you as a person, but with you on these contracts. And after some back and forth between them, it turned out there were two issues that they didn't even discuss in their consistent quarrel. One was timing, to get quick response and get this established and settled quickly. And the second one was getting the people, the salespeople, involved in finding out some of the details of the customer requirements and customer needs, because they were not properly documented. So she was kind of stabbing a little bit in muddy waters, to fix and create the right contractual setup, the right legal setup, and the salespeople really they were not having a problem with the contract itself, with the legalese of the contract or anything, but they wanted a speedy feedback and so that they can respond fast without weeks of time. So it was really then in the end a little bit of a capacity issue and a little bit of an information issue with heads up information, and this is what's coming, and some details. So they worked out the checklist because most of these contracts were 90% was kind of the same, and then 10% was adjusted to a specific product, service, customer needs. And once they had that figured out, all of a sudden the conflict was in essence resolved, and they started to really collaborate very quick and very well and very efficient.
Superb.
But
I think there's a
it's just finding out what you really what is really your problem.
right.
Like, yeah, you're yelling at me, that's fine, but what is it?
Yes, a great example. And I think once the real issue has been identified, which goes back to what you were saying and the example that I gave, that once we know what is the outcome that we both want, or what is the real problem to solve for, then things become easier. In this example as well, thinking about the checklist or the solution itself would have been simpler, but arriving at this is the problem that needs to get solved was the hurdle. So I'm curious, in this example, how is there a specific tactic that she used to even arrive at this is the problem?
Good question. I think you may have heard that before, leading with questions.
Right. Yes.
No, it is not very complex. It's just putting yourself into somebody else's shoes as well and looking at the land from their perspective and understanding where they're coming from. And then lead the process with the right questions to find a useful solution.
Awesome. I think this kind of also answers my core question in probably three parts in that case. When I was asking about what skill or habit one should practice or develop to become good at conflict management. So I think the first I would list it as problem finding, the skill of problem finding. Before you think about honing your problem solving skills, more important is problem finding, skill number one. How to become better at that. Skill number two is leading with questions or asking better questions, which is what you just mentioned. And I think in this example, I can also see that she was able to separate out the people from the problem. So most often in conflict, since I am having a conflict with a person, or often it has happened with me, I've seen with clients that it becomes very difficult to separate out the problem from the person, specifically if I have a history with that person.
Absolutely, absolutely. Think about it with them. It was interesting because her attitude and it's mindset. And let me come back to this for a moment. That's where it really starts. Her attitude was these salespeople just don't want to deal with the legal consequences. They would like to just give it away and get it done. You know, and the salespeople were considering, well, legal is always blocking us from doing business. So that was the starting mindset. And you know, our mindset is in essence a frame. And within this frame, thinking takes place. So whatever the mindset is, our thinking is limited to that frame. So by changing the mindset and opening up, becoming more what I would call open-minded and looking at other perspectives, not only my own, allows you to think different. And in managing conflicts and resolving conflicts, that is probably the most important thing. Recognizing your own mindset, opening that up, and then finding out and going about it with this wider horizon.
Understood. So it reminds me, by the way, these three skills, two in particular, they remind me of two books. So one, when you mention about leading with questions, it reminds me of the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, uh, who was an ex FBI agent, master of negotiation, and I think he mentions in a very articulate manner how he honed his negotiation skill in toughest of the situation by leading with questions.
Mhm.
In case anyone who has not read this book, I would highly recommend. It's a great book,
Oh,
enjoyable watch.
absolutely. That's a good one.
And the second one, which in this example, when you mentioned about separating out the people from the problem, I think I had mentioned about this book earlier also. But Getting to Yes by Roger Fisher. It's a great book. It has got multiple other nuggets as well. But one that I had picked up was this separating out people from the problem. Hard one, a hard skill, I must say, for all of us. At the end of the day, we are humans, so we don't mechanically just look at the problem. Specifically, when there is a background, same set of people that we are working with, we create these prejudices that if I am doing a discussion with so and so person, the person is like this, and hence he or she is going to speak in a particular angle or in a particular way only. So that's the second one. And
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you think about, as long as it is legal against sales or sales against legal,
yeah,
we are person against person.
yes.
But if you can manage to get sales and legal about contracts or the contract management
Hmm.
and information provision and simplification, all of a sudden you can find solutions.
Totally agree. So I'm curious, Manfred. I think we covered how you define conflict management. We covered uh, three of the skills or habits. I'm sure there are more for anyone to become better at conflict management, but we covered three of them: problem finding, leading with questions, and separating out people from the problem. These are just example skills that one could look at, become better at, build habits around. So now my third part is.
May I say something here?
So,
I don't want to oversimplify this
of
here,
course,
okay?
of course.
This, but there are some basic concepts that one needs to consider and maybe internalize to get on the right path.
Yeah,
Obviously, situations are different and it becomes more complex and there are more complex issues. The example that I brought was not a very complex issue, but it was a very practical issue which
mm,
happens every day in every organization.
mm,
And the good old 80-20 rule, 80% of those conflicts that happen every day are actually quite simple.
yeah, yeah,
Maybe 20% are far more complex and sophisticated and require uh, well, additional tricks of the trade to really deal with it effectively. But hey, if you can solve 80% of day-to-day conflict activities, I think everyone is at least 3 steps further.
yeah, yeah. Which, by the way, so on those 20% is where I was about to ask my next question. So, which is where you need to sharpen your skills, improve, and which is also where perhaps a coach could play a role. So my next question was more about in this example of yours which you gave. Uh, what role did you play, or how do you go about in helping leaders become better at conflict management?
Well, we talk about what is, if I would work this with you, I would first ask you about your perspective in this conflict. And then I will challenge you, Raul, what if I sit in your shoes and you sit in the other person's shoes with whom you have the conflict? What would you tell me? What would be
Mm,
your perspective from that side?
mm,
And that creates some rethinking. And you can do this yourself.
we
You know,
can't. I think it's very, it's probably
that's what I
theoretically.
encourage. Going
Yeah,
forward,
yeah.
always put yourself for a moment into the other side's chair and look at it at the table from that side.
Mm,
And then look at where can you find maybe commonalities that you can use to build a foundation from which you can then tackle what you don't have in common.
mm. Got it. So, and is this something, um, um, uh, the example that you gave here, is this something the core of what you do in such a situation when you're helping someone to become better at conflict management, or this is the starting point where what you're doing is helping the person get started by looking at things from the other person's perspective, but over a series of sessions, is there certain habits that you help the person build up?
Well, yes, and one of the habits that work for many things, but certainly also for conflict management and conflict resolution, is invest some time every day, and if it's only 10 or 15 minutes, to think about your thinking. Step outside yourself, and that may sound a little bit esoteric, but
Mm,
step outside yourself and look at how you're thinking. Because in that, there is a lot of interesting findings that you can make that will help you to find the next step, to find the next. By the end of the day, my clients also learn over time what I call self coaching, so that they can take that step aside and look at the situation and say, okay, and I'm having fun with that. I challenge them to think about, okay, what would Manfred ask now? How would Manfred challenge me?
I love that.
And when you work with somebody a while,
Mm,
then they start recognizing a certain pattern or a certain approach that in essence I figured out to work with them. Every client is different, so one of my tasks is to figure out the nuances and then challenge my client in a way that helps my client to further develop and develop his self-coaching skill as well.
I love it. I think that in itself, if it's a goal that how do I reach a stage with Manfred, that how do I become better at self coaching, it itself is worthy of spending time with you to learn new habits and then reach that stage.
Yeah, that's basically yeah, that's basically the outcome. Yeah.
On that, let me move to the next one. So this is very helpful, I think, to understand how can one think about becoming better at conflict management and how you, in particular, as a coach, help your clients becoming better at it. The next one, Manfred, is mastery of priorities and time management. So I'll start with the same question. How do you define mastery of priorities and time management.
Again, I'm not trying to oversimplify things, but uh, again, 80-20 rule, 80% is quite simple. So that said, first of all, we don't manage time. We all have 24 hours.
Yep.
So what we manage is the priorities of how we are going to utilize those 24 hours. And it's quite fascinating when you look at people that come to me with time management questions and issues, and I use a little exercise with them. And the first I try to find out with them is, do you have a task list? And many people have a task list. So I say, well, look at your task list and identify 3 categories on this task list. The one category is called must-do items. Now, of course, the first question, what is a must-do item? Well, for my definition, a must-do item is anything that you must do today, otherwise it will have a negative impact on your company or organization, yourself, your family, or your friends. So that's a must-do. If you don't do it today, somebody is getting hurt, either physically, financially, emotionally, whatever that might be. Another must-do element is anything that you have made a commitment. If you told me, Manfred, I will get that to you by Friday, end of business, and it is Friday and you haven't done it yet, on Friday it has become a must-do. On Thursday, it was a should-do. On Wednesday, it might have been a would be nice to do already. So the must-do is very specific. When you have made a commitment, and what makes that important? As leaders, it's a question of reliability. You want people to understand and to know and to believe if Rahul says X, that's what he means, and that's how he's going to act. Say what you do and do what you say. So that's one part, and then anything that creates a detrimental, a negative effect. So the second group is should-dos. It's those items that when you don't do them today, it won't really rock the world yet, but it would have been good if it would be done today. And then there is the like to do or fun to do. Those, of course, when you look at that list first, you may find that you have an overwhelming amount of must-dos. Well, then you have to make decisions. And what I challenge my clients is put to every item that they have on this list their best estimate of what time it will take to do that. 10 minutes, 2 hours, half a day, I don't care. Your best guesstimate. And then go to your calendar and move that into the respective time slots. When you will then find out most likely that you don't have the time to do all the must-dos. So now you have to really think through what is truly a must-do. Because we are sometimes a little bit too quick with deciding on must-dos. And that's a learning process. And sometimes you have to make then some hard decisions. You need to call people and say, I know I would have to do that today, but I can't. It will be a day late or it will be 2 days late. How can we manage the damage? Is there another way? That's really then the consequence. Very often you will find there are other ways. And very often what we also do, which is quite interesting, if I come to you and say, Rahul, I would need from you this or that, when can you get that to me? You may be thinking, okay, today I'm booked, tomorrow I have some opening that should be possible to get it done. I can get that to you tomorrow evening. I will say, great, thank you, appreciate it. And now I'm expecting it tomorrow evening. I really need it next Tuesday. But you have offered tomorrow evening, so I'll take that. Of course, now you are a little bit in troubles, and tomorrow you realize you don't have the time. So you may not deliver. Well, for me, it's not really a problem. I only need it next Tuesday. But I'm starting to be already a little bit, Raul promised and he's not delivering. So the first question, when somebody wants something from you, the first question needs to be, when, by the latest, do you need that? Because then I would have told you, well, I really need it next Tuesday afternoon. I would like it ideally on Monday evening so I can take a look at it. But my very last possibility is Tuesday afternoon. So that gives you now a different perspective and you can plan differently. But we often are quick to commit to something that's not necessary to be committed in that short time. And then we run into troubles. While we're not creating a must-do issue for the other person yet, we are damaging our standing because we have committed to something and then we haven't delivered. It's not that I'm saying, well, I mean, he didn't deliver it by Wednesday evening, but I got it by Friday, which is still fine. I have no problem. That's not the way I would think then. I would think, okay, he promised by Wednesday, and now it's Friday, and finally on Friday afternoon I get it. Not good. I mean, I have it, but it's not good because he promised something and he didn't do it. So these are little intricacies how to plan priorities and how to manage priorities. But the first thing is what you have, put it into those three categories. And then work your way through. When you do this systematically, you will find over time, maybe over a week, maybe over 2 weeks, you will start getting to the point where your must-dos uh, start to become manageable on that day because you have gotten out of the backlog. And you see the cool thing that when you do your must-dos first thing of the day, get it out during the morning as quick as you can. Then no matter what happens in the afternoon, and there is always something lurking to happen, no matter what happens, you're already in good shape. Your must-dos are done. Yeah, you had planned something else to get done, some should-dos, maybe even want-to-dos. And then there comes this issue which you have to deal with now, which you hadn't planned. You can stress-free take care of it. Otherwise, if you are moving must-dos at the end of the day and you get into the situation where something came up that you hadn't planned with, that has become now a must-do because it's an emergency and it has all kinds of implications, now you are stressed because you still have those other three things that you must do today. And when we are stressed, we don't think that clear. When we are under stress, our thinking takes more place in the amygdala and less at our frontal lobes. And that is challenging because it's much more simplified thinking. It's the fight or flight type thinking. And that is not very sophisticated. It helps us survive, but that's all it does.
That was some really powerful wisdom over the last 15 to 20 minutes, Manfred, I must say. Uh, for a problem which I think is so common when people are asked why, what is the biggest challenge? I think one of the most common responses that I hear, plus sometimes I also say, is I don't have time. How do I make time? And I'll try to probably share my perspective, building upon what you shared, plus I think how I look at it. I think, firstly, it's like one of the most important problems, not only as an effective leader, but I would say as an effective professional, as an effective management professional. Anyone and everyone must learn how to become good at this skill.
Mhm.
And first, the definition of this skill is that it is not about managing time. As you rightly said, everyone has got 24 hours. So you don't manage time. What you manage are priorities. So getting that distinction right, that it's about managing priorities. It's about prioritization. That's the first distinction. Second distinction is some sort of framework that must be applied to classify the tasks at hand. Now that classification could be, like you said, must do, should do, and nice to do, which are fun activities. That classification could be what Stephen Covey once popularized: urgent and important, urgent versus important matrix. Because a lot of times we are focusing on what's urgent because that's what come to us. That's a reactive
Mhm.
approach to looking at prioritization. But then there are areas or tasks which are important and which might not get into our bucket itself because they are important, but nobody is fighting on us that this needs to get done.
Why
So,
would you deal with something that is just urgent but has no importance?
right. So I think there are tasks which are urgent. There are tasks which are important. There are tasks which are neither, and of course, those which are neither urgent nor important, they don't require attention. But some tasks which are not urgent but they are important, sometimes they slip away. But again, not getting into which framework is the right one. Where what I'm taking away is that everyone must start by first using some metric which is relevant for them to prioritize. That
Mhm.
is, after the distinction, the first step is apply a framework that works for you to
It's
classify.
all about prioritization.
It's all about prioritization, and hence there has to be a metric which uh, I would like to apply and classify the task at hand,
And
which gives
look,
me a sense.
I don't care. I don't care which terminology you use.
Yes,
I
yes,
don't care how you call it.
yeah, yeah.
I don't care if you have two groups, three groups, or four groups,
Yeah,
but I
it's
care
almost
that you
like,
have the most important one.
yeah, absolutely. And Manfred, the analogy that I have created for myself, it's almost like thinking of time as money. Now, if I have money, I would not spend equal amount of money in everything on everything that I need in my life. Similarly, there is a value that I can almost attribute to the time that I have.
Hmm.
Depending on when I am at my best, that time is the most precious. And I think you indicated to that if I'm getting the most important must do things right in the beginning of the day, for a lot of us, that's when we are at our best. The stress levels are low. We are able to produce the best outcome. So I would almost attribute that that's equivalent to the highest amount of money that I have available during the day. And as I spend money during the day, I'm left with very little money. It's almost saying that I might be left with an hour in the end, but the value of that hour at the end of the day versus the value of the hour in the beginning of the day is very, very different. So unless I have done some sort of a prioritization, I would be spending my more valuable time on something that might be not as important for me to produce results. So second step, prioritization. Whatever method is being applied, which is relevant, is a must do. And then comes the third step to me, which is about scheduling, or a more recent term that I learned, which is time boxing.
Hmm.
So, which is basically saying that task at the end of the day, they would remain in my to-do list unless I am time boxing, which is just a way to block a time in my calendar, either I'm when I'm taking a weekly view or during the day, that unless I have blocked the time that 9 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. 90 minutes is when I would be giving my time to this particular activity, it is very unlikely that it would happen during the day. So many of us, and I was guilty of it pretty early in my career, I used to have a long to-do list. And no surprise there that more often than not, that to-do list used to remain there with me in some shape and form for multiple days.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then I then I learned that the to-do list is probably only one part. That to-do list needs to get prioritized first. Not every task on the to-do list is important. And then after prioritization, I need to do time boxing. I need to commit myself in terms of a block of time when I would be paying attention to that one task at any point of time for that task to happen. So that to me is like the third step, which for a lot of us it doesn't happen. It specifically doesn't happen for those tasks which we do not put on calendar, because not every task goes on calendar. But then one can use a variety of. I mean, my favorite is you just use a pen and paper, but just block, create a block. If I do it, so if I'm
yeah.
not putting something on the
And
calendar, I would.
for that, it makes a lot of sense to get good at assessing time to each activity, to each
Yes.
block. Really, and you may be off in the beginning when you start doing that,
Hmm.
but you get
Hmm.
better and better as you are getting into the habit of doing it and making it automatically.
Yeah.
And you will get a good feel what takes you 10 minutes, what takes you 20 minutes, and what takes you an hour, and then put that into your calendar. And of course, in this whole context of priority and planning and all this, there is a whole bunch of other things that we could talk about, but this is probably not necessarily for that session or for that podcast here, because I need to keep some secrets for myself too. No, but really, if people start the simple prioritization and time boxing, as you call it, that in itself will again take you two steps forward.
Absolutely. And it has created a world of difference for me. I think the way I look at it, the way I prioritize, the way I get things done, because of time boxing, it has created a lot of difference to me. That these they sound simple, but once I started executing, I saw a lot of difference in the way I'm able to get things done. I think that's the bottom line. That it's about getting things done, and how do you get things done by prioritizing and by blocking time. I do want to mention the fourth step, third or the fourth step, depending on how we are looking at things here, which is a reward at the end of the day. And it gives such a big dopamine hit, anyways, once whatever was blocked for the day from a time boxing perspective, they got done. And like you said, you become better at estimating how much time will things take. And soon enough for me, I was able to actually complete whatever I was blocking. But then comes other than the natural dopamine hit, that that uh, that instance of taking it off, that yes, this got done, rewarding myself on days or when streaks of days when I'm getting a lot done. So that act of rewarding uh, completes the loop for me and builds this system for me, that yes,
Mhm.
this is a system that is not only working, but I want to build it as a habit. And since we talk about in these conversations about building habits, not just tactics, that has worked really well for me to create the system and stick with it.
Mhm. No, no, you are absolutely right. And you know, the cool thing when you do this and when you put this into a calendar and you get things done, and you don't get everything done every day, and sometimes you get even more done than you planned because it worked out easier, or you got less interrupted, and all these things. But when you document that in this way and you look at the day at the end of the day, and you can say, okay, there's a lot of check marks on it. Was a good day, was a good productive day, got a lot out. That in itself is a great reward, and that will make you feel good because it will eliminate those days where you probably worked your rear end off, and at the end you get on your way home and you think, I worked like hell, and I don't know what I did. I can't really say what I accomplished, but I worked hard. That's not very satisfying. And let's be clear, time is the only resource
Yeah,
that we never can get back. And this is an understanding that people have to internalize. Everything else you can, there are ways, your health, you can get the doctor, you can get medicine, you can do healing, whatever. Money you can get back somehow. Sometimes with money you can repair things, but time is the only thing, once gone, once wasted, once spent, you can't get it back.
so true.
And you know, sometimes I'm of course heavy into reading, and when I suggest uh, some articles to my clients, and the client tells me, well, I don't really have time to read. I use another little exercise which I will share here. It's just 2 minutes.
Sure.
Um, if I would have that conversation with you, I would ask you, look, Rahul, there are certain things that we have to do to survive. One is to sleep. How much do you sleep every day on average? 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours?
7 hours. Yeah.
7 hours. So that's 35 hours in a week, correct? So how much time do you use to eat? Because you need to eat. What do you use every day for consuming some food and staying alive?
90 minutes.
Okay, so 1.5 hours a day is 10.5 hours, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So how much do you work every day? How many hours on average?
Mm, 10 to 12.
Let's say 11
Yeah.
times 5 is 55. That okay? Or
Yeah.
60. I'll go with 60. I don't know.
Yeah.
Let's do 60.
Okay.
That is altogether 100, 105.5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We have 168 hours in a week. That means you have another 63 hours disposable for family, for fun, for television, for whatever you want to do, or reading it for an hour or two a week or three. You have 63 hours available. Because we have 168 hours a week. As I said, you have 24 hours and I have 24 hours. So if you put it into that perspective, when you say, well, I don't have time for this or I don't have time for that, well, for your survival, which is sleep, food, and work, you have typically people have between 100 and 110 hours. That's pretty much universal. No matter whom I ask, I get about around this number. That means you have 50 to 60 hours to mess around at your disposal.
And do what's important. Very powerful, very powerful. I think, and we don't look at it that way because I think the distinction in this method, which opens up the mind for me also, is that we look at it uh, on from the lens of 24 hours in the day to day, while what you did is that you took the lens of the entire week. The entire week is available, and if first of all, if I plan or prioritize and then plan my week out, then there's a lot that I can get done. But if I make it as short as just the next 24 hours, probably I'll always struggle and come back to the same answer that I don't have time.
And look, what I also work with my clients when we talk about prioritization and using time efficiently, ultimately we work on getting your routine work day down to 10 or 9 hours. To be honest, sometimes people claim 12 hours. And when you really then start assessing it, and I have some exercises for that too that I'm working with my clients, then it turns out, well, it's not 12 hours. Really, work is maybe less than 9 hours or even less than 8 hours, but we do things in between that are really not work, but it is during our work time. So what if you eliminate those during the work time to focus on what you really need to do during the work time? You might be getting away very effectively with concentrated 8 hours a day, which opens up more disposable time.
I think I need to book a session with you to find out that for me and bring my 12 hours down to 8 or 9.
It might be an interesting finding.
Absolutely. I think so. Very interesting, Manfred. I think we are coming to the close of this particular session. I like always, I do want to mention a couple of books on this topic. Would love to see if you have some thoughts on that, those or others. On the topic of time, since we are talking, uh, two of the books that recently influenced me a lot. One is Indistractable by Neer Ayal. So that's where I picked up the term time boxing. Not that I was not aware of completely, but the way Neer again, Neer's blog as well as books have always fascinating because he brings in a perspective which is very powerful to build habits. So I think I first picked up about building habits through Neer. And here as well, how to build a habit of time boxing is something I picked up there. And the second book is by two ex-Googlers. One of them is Jake Knapp. They have written a book called Make Time. And again, I think the title itself is like, a lot of people say that I don't have time. So that's where the title is Make Time. And they, similar concept, but I think they talk in a very, very practical manner that how one can create a system to actually make time for what's important. So
Mhm.
these are two books that I read recently. I'm sure there are other books, but just curious to hear from you as well in case you
I
have.
know the first one and I don't know the second one.
Okay. And
So,
any.
look, there is plenty of good reading out there, and just get to it, do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Awesome. And this also gave a glimpse of how you deal with this particular key to become an effective leader. And this key was about how do you prioritize and manage time. I think in the key we do mention how do you manage time, but at the end of the day, it is about really it's really about mastery of priorities.
Managing
So
priorities.
absolutely, absolutely. So thank you, Manfred. I think today I learned about two of the 10 very important keys to becoming an effective leader. I learned about conflict management. I learned about mastery of priorities and time management. Lovely interaction. Thank you so much for sharing the nuggets. Thank you for sharing what the stories, and thank you for sharing some of the powerful techniques that are going to help me become better as a professional and as a leader.
We only touch the basics, but well, if you focus on those, you're already making progress. It was great being with you.
Thank you so much, and look forward to our next session.
All the best.